Does anyone have the video or the exact date handy of when Lindsey Graham betrayed America and decided to become a full-blown Trump wingnut? Asking for a friend. That friend being democracy. Dyze In Your House. Exclusively on East Coast Radio.
Representing Staten Island.
Huh. Jay Porks here. And I know I've been a little busy on this East Coast Radio stuff. Talking about resist, remove, and recreational. But I gotta tell you about one more thing. You should be a East Coast Radiohead. That's right. And you can become a East Coast Radiohead just by going to patreon.com/JPorks and check out the offers we have there. There's a low tier, a middle tier, and a high tier. All of those get you bonus content, exclusive personalized artwork, and even a chance to interact with me on a personal level over the phone. We could talk about what's going on in this podcast. We could talk about how we are going to flip these seats blue in November. And we are going to vote like this is our final election, because it might be. Patreon.com/JPorks. Become a East Coast Radiohead and join the resistance. Hey yo, who's in the house? Dyze in your house. What is the word, peeps? What goes on? It is Wednesday, a Wacky Wednesday edition of Dyze In Your House. Coming to you on East Coast Radio for the least heard voices. It is early AF right now, and we are trying to get this out here before day 2 of the Kavanaugh hearings, because we have to talk about day 1 of the Kavanaugh hearings. But before we talk about any of the hearings that happened yesterday, we have to talk about hearings that didn't happen. And yeah, this is gonna be a shorter, faster episode of Dyze In Your House, so just bear with me for a second. We went no intro. I went the Patreon commercial to kick us off, so we don't know. That's covered. We're good. We're covered with ads right now. So what I need you to do is I need you to understand one thing. Out of everything that came out of the hearings yesterday, what still never happened is no matter how you may have think the Dems behaved, the Republicans can sit there and, they can claim moral high ground and all that stuff, and that's fine and dandy. And they can claim that it's so vital to fill this Supreme Court seat. It is so vital that it needs to be rushed through without reviewing any documents. But first, let's talk about somebody that didn't get a hearing. That person is Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was nominated by Barack Obama with an entire year left in his presidency. You can't say the same for Trump right now based on all of the pending, happening investigations. Obama was told that he could not name a Supreme Court justice. He named one. Not only was Merrick Garland not given hearings, Merrick Garland was not given a meeting, as I swat at a fly here in my room. Merrick Garland was not given a meeting with any Republican senators, which is less that could be said about Judge Kavanaugh. At least Democrats met with him. At least Democrats are having this hearing. And we had the same amount of a majority last time. So, okay, Mitch McConnell can use his Senate parliamentary tricks in order to just not even have the hearings. That's complete and utterly disgusting. It's not like the Dems, it's not like Barack Obama nominated the president of the ACLU to be the Supreme Court justice. Merrick Garland was sort of a centrist in the middle kind of guy. Republicans wouldn't have it. They're not hearing it. We're not even going to have a hearing. We're not even going to meet with him. So, okay. So, nobody should be surprised about anything that the Democrats do, any tricks that the Democrats try to pull out on the Judiciary Committee in order to stop Brett Kavanaugh from being placed to the Supreme Court. Because if Brett Kavanaugh is placed to the Supreme Court, then you are going to have two people, two judges, who are going to serve on the Supreme Court for life, who have been placed there by somebody who is a criminal. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that like, oh man, he's doing a bad job in office, so I'm going to call him a criminal. No. Donald Trump is a criminal. He's got his campaign chair has pleaded guilty and has a collusion trial coming up. His personal lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, has pleaded guilty. No, I'm sorry. Campaign manager has been found guilty. Michael Cohen, personal attorney and fixer, pleaded guilty. One being campaign finance violations under the direction of Trump. We have Paul Manafort, again, Trump's campaign chair, who was found guilty of 8 counts of tax fraud and tax evasion and having shell companies. Foreign bank account, not reporting foreign bank accounts is what it was. His banker has pleaded guilty and is cooperating with the Mueller probe. Roger Stone has a GoFundMe for his legal fees, and he has not yet been indicted. You have Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator in a current investigation. And he's going to be able to name a judge to the Supreme Court who doesn't believe that somebody occupying the Oval Office should be investigated? That needs to be looked at. So, why can't Dems have a chance to vet? Why don't we get... Why is it so important when the Supreme Court seat was open for a year? And why aren't we vet? We need to vet how we got here. Why Justice Anthony Kennedy, whose friends loaned Trump money from the bank they work at when Trump's family can't get loans, why... We have to look at how this was to become to pass. We have to look at how this decision was made. And you know, from reading all accounts, Bob Woodward has a new book. It's straight fire. I would go check it out. It's called Fear. And it goes inside, you know, a wannabe despot orange cunt monkey's grasp to hold on to reality that's slipping away from him because he's not fit to hold the office. And was placed there by a hostile foreign power because that hostile foreign power just doesn't happen to like Hillary Clinton all that much. Weird. So you have to think about it this way. Trump is a guy who's about loyalty to himself, not the country. So people who he nominates for the Supreme Court obviously had to take that loyalty oath. The same oath that Jim Comey was supposed to take. The same oath we hear about. You have to be loyal to Trump, not loyal to the country. There's a big difference. People, the troops, they're not over there. They're not overseas fighting for our freedom for the Oval Office. They're fighting for America, the country, the democracy, the idea of America. They're fighting for that. That's why people go to the services. Except the ones that get draft determinants because they have bone spurs, and then try to call themselves real Americans. So, like, this whole idea that people have to take loyalty oaths to Trump is completely and utterly disgusting. And if you think that Neil Gorsuch, if you think that if you think that, what's this clown's name? Kavanaugh. If you think Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, if you think that they didn't have to pledge their loyalty to their savior, to their savior-in-chief, then, you know, you got another thing coming. I got a bridge I got to sell you in Brooklyn, half price after 5 today. Hey, honestly. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, what can the Democrats do? We don't have the majority. If the Democrats don't show up to these judiciary hearings, they don't get to ask questions. So, opening round, Grassley's statements, opening statements, were interrupted by Kamala Harris, by Richard Blumenthal, by Cory Booker, by A.B. Klobuchar, by Sheldon Whitehouse. They were interrupting because they would have liked to, you know, resume some regular order. Especially, you know, listen, everybody watched the John McCain service. Democrats and Republicans alike, everybody said, you know what? It's time to get back to normal. It's time to not be so divided on these party lines. It's time to get back to normal. And then the Republicans put on that show yesterday. After they didn't give Merrick Garland a meeting. A meeting! Remember, Merrick Garland did not receive one meeting. They're trying to shove Kavanaugh down our throats. And all their opening statements are so like, oh, Kavanaugh, you're a good friend of mine and you're a great person. And they try to make it seem like there's this moral high ground in being, you know, conservative. Like that they're taking the moral high ground because they're not the ones interrupting. Don't act like if we had the majority in 16 and we were able to name Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. Don't pretend like Republicans wouldn't have made a bigger show out of it than the Democrats attempted to yesterday. And all the Democrats were asking for was a little more time because on Friday night, at the end of business hours, 42,000 documents were dumped on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And don't tell me that Grassley and Co. were able to read it because according to math, that would mean they're reading 7,000 pages an hour. And that's not a thing. I'm sorry, that wasn't Friday, that was Sunday. That was Monday night. Because Friday night was when it was announced that 102 documents from Kavanaugh's time serving as the White House staff secretary were being held confidential because of executive privilege. Even though no executive privilege has actually been invoked by either the current occupant of the White House or George Bush, who he served under. Now you might ask yourself, Jay, why are those documents important? Well, George Bush administration did some torture, and we gotta know how Judge Kavanaugh feels about that. So we gotta ask those questions. How can we ask informed questions if we don't have the documents? And if something's confidential, is he gonna answer the questions? And if he doesn't answer the questions, how do we know? We don't. This is reasons why we need... And Cory Booker was like, listen, no one's saying wait till after the midterms to have this hearing. Can you give us a couple of days, review some documents? Grassley, not having it. Grassley let the Republicans run that like it was mob rule. Richard Blumenthal had motions. The motions were denied without any forethought, without any... It didn't matter what he said. He could have said, hey, I have a motion for these 17 women to come give you fellatio. And Chuck Grassley was ignoring it because he was not granting any motions by any Democrats. So Chuck Grassley somehow is compromised. Lindsey Graham? What happened at Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham used to be the most staunch Trump critic. Now he's Trump's butt buddy. Now I get... You know, there used to be that meme of like every time Lindsey Graham said something like negative about Trump, it would be Lindsey Graham hiding behind a tree, waiting for like the tweets to come at him. Now I feel like they go play golf together and they go behind a tree and Lindsey Graham gets on his knees and sucks Trump off. That's what I really think, because that's the way he acts. That's the way he acts. And listen, Brett Kavanaugh could be a nice guy. No one is sitting here saying that Brett Kavanaugh's a criminal. I'm not saying that. He's a very conservative judge who I'm not a fan of his views. But no one's saying he broke the law, and he's not even, to my knowledge, Judge Kavanaugh's not even responsible for these documents. This is strictly the Republicans needing to rush through this Supreme Court nominee so then they could fire Rod Rosenstein, fire Jeff Sessions, put in an attorney general who will limit the Mueller probe so they cannot come to their final investigational conclusions on Trump. The Mueller probe is closing in on Trump, man. Anybody that doesn't think that this is happening is not reading is not looking at the same news I'm looking at, which is the bipartisan, you know, fact-checked, all news all the time place. Bob Woodward's got a book. If anybody calls Bob Woodward's book fake news, again, I mean, you people may as well be compromised. Does Russia have compromise on you? Bob Woodward took down Nixon. Bob Woodward has done books on many a president, many a corruption, many a party. Many people have not liked the things he said, but he has never been inaccurate. We have the absolute possibility and almost certainty that Trump will be subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury. The lower courts are not going to rule on that. And if they rule on that, there's going to be appeals. And it is going to reach the highest court in the land. And that land will have 2 judges on it, placed there by Trump, who have pledged their allegiance not to the United States of America, but to Donald Trump. And unless those 2 judges choose to recuse themselves from any matter involving the person who selected them, then they cannot be sat on the Supreme Court. Furthermore, that was the process. Now let's talk about let's talk about who Brett Kavanaugh is. Brett Kavanaugh is somebody that worked with Ken Starr. Yes, Ken Starr. The Robert Mueller of the 90s, the Robert Mueller of Republicans, even though Robert Mueller is Republican. The Robert Mueller, the Ken Starr, who was investigating Bill Clinton. Ken Starr, Brett Kavanaugh doesn't think, now that after he worked with Ken Starr on the Clinton v. Jones and the impeachment cases, and he was all for it then. Now, here's a quote, "Even the lesser burdens of a criminal investigation, including preparing for questioning by criminal investigators, are time-consuming and distracting. Like civil suits, criminal investigations take the president's focus away from his or her responsibilities to the people. A president who is concerned about an ongoing criminal investigation is almost inevitably going to do a worse job as president." Well, that's Judge Brett Kavanaugh, by the way. That's an opinion piece he wrote. So he feels that the president can't be burdened with investigations, even though he was on the team that led the investigation of all investigations, which was Ken Starr versus Bill Clinton in the late 90s, if you remember that. Disgusting. So he was all for it then. Not down with it now. And now he's going to be on the Supreme Court. What is the rush? Merrick Garland was not given a hearing. Roe v. Wade. What about Roe? All of the Republicans are saying the same thing. It's settled law. It's settled law. Settled law only means that it's yet to be overturned. So, unless Brett Kavanaugh testifies today, tomorrow, or the next day that Roe v. Wade is correct law in his opinion, then he's not fit to serve on the Supreme Court. Again, this is the highest court in the land. This is above the presidency. I just want to know what the rush is. Because if the only hang-up on Brett Kavanaugh is that we're Democrats and we really don't like how Republican he is, you know what? We can't make that argument because that's not a real thing. Because, I mean, the one thing, you know, we lost. Russia won in 2016. So, all we can do is ask for a little more time. There's no way that we're going to get more votes. If Republicans don't realize, I mean, I wish Republicans would just see what I see here. Republicans are not losing the Senate. In fact, they may pick up seats. So what they need to do is chill, give us some more time, because you're going to have more votes anyway. So what's the point? You're going to get to confirm your dude anyway, because you already got the nuclear option here. You've taken away the Senate. You've changed the rules of the Senate from needing 60 votes to only needing a majority. And there's only 51. It's crazy. I just don't. So if somebody is against Roe v. Wade and gay marriage, because these are things that he's not for, because he's ultra-conservative, how do you think, and he's for assault weapons, Judge Kavanaugh feels that assault weapons can't be regulated because they weren't around when the Constitution was written. What? Neither were gay people, but you're trying to regulate their marriage status? Fair or foul? And also, did you see Fred Guttenberg? Fred Guttenberg is a father of a girl who got killed in Parkland. The Parkland shooting that kicked off the March for Our Lives campaign. So when they go to recess, after Ted Cruz gives his opening monologue, remember Ted Cruz, the guy who said Trump is a whack job, the guy who Trump called his wife ugly, and said that his father killed killed John Kennedy. That guy who's campaigning for Trump at a rally, who Trump is rallying for, he begged Trump to rally for him. After he gave his opening statement, they went to recess. And before they went to recess, Fred Guttenberg, father of the slain daughter, goes up to Neil Gorsuch, sticks out his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Fred Guttenberg, father of a girl that was killed at Parkland." He has his hand out, and Kavanaugh closes his jacket, turns and walks away, and does not even shake the guy's hand. I'm sorry, but this guy wasn't walking up to Kavanaugh with a list of policy requirements and stuff like that, and things that he wants him to vote up and down on. He just wanted to say hello. That's what Fred Guttenberg does. He goes up to people and he says that. It's part of his therapy. He did that to Lawrence O'Donnell, and they spoke. If I saw him and he did that to me, I'd speak to him. I wouldn't turn and walk away. But you got Brett Kavanaugh, who's basically for assault weapons. And Sheldon Whitehouse was making very good points in his opening statements. All of the time, the Republicans always seem to win. Whether it be underhand tactics, whether it be lobbying, big money lobbyers coming in, like, look at the people that are funding Brett Kavanaugh's, like, commercials and stuff like that. They are all highly conservative groups. Why would we need this much convincing if his only issue was being conservative? We wouldn't. Something nefarious going on here. And I'm glad that we have stars like Kamala Harris, like Sheldon Whitehouse, like Amy Klobuchar, like Cory Booker, like Richard Blumenthal, who are going to ask the tough questions and who aren't going to just let this go by without a fight. And we are looking at days of hearings now, so I hope you get to listen to this before the hearings today. This has been our day one recap of the Kavanaugh hearings. I am Jay Porks. This is Dyze In Your House on Least Coast Radio. For the least heard voices.